And start recording in three, two, and one. Whoops. All right. And one. All right. And welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. I'm your host, Ben, and I'm joined by my co host, Rex. And Rex, good to see you as always.
Good to be back.
Yeah, and so this is going to be a Champions League final episode. We'll just kind of touch on that. We'll try to get some of the rumors that are happening with the transfer window because that's already started. And this will be, I guess, maybe our last show for the summer. Maybe we'll try to do a transfer update somewhere there. So I don't know, we're trying to fit this all in. It is a little late, but we did want to talk a little bit about the Champions League final because Man City did go on to win their first one at Inter Milan's expense. Probably what everyone kind of expected. I don't think the game was what we expected, which we'll maybe get
Mhm.
to. And one note I kind of put here is Jeremy notoriously doesn't like finals. And he was texting me. He was like, "God, I hate finals," and it's kind of hard to disagree with him. We did have a terrific one
Yeah.
with the World Cup. But this was kind of a typical final, and I think they even said during the broadcast. I didn't even like kind of realize it, watching it by myself. That for the last 3 or 4 Champions Leagues have only been 1 goal games. So they were like, yeah,
Well,
Kingsley
that's right.
Coman,
Yeah.
Havertz, the one, the Real Madrid and Liverpool one. Though that one it was an exciting one though because Courtois was forced to make like 12 good saves.
Mhm.
Liverpool didn't have their scoring bits, but this one was kind of, once a team got the first goal, you kind of figured that was probably going to be it. I think I predicted 1-1. It was maybe there was a chance for that to happen with a couple of Lukaku chances. And Rex, I think you said 2-1, and there's probably a case to be make for that because Foden had a brilliant turn, and all he had to do was beat the keeper, and he kind of tried to side foot pass it in, which we'll maybe get to. So that could have happened as well. I guess we'll kind of just get started with your first thoughts and takeaways. I mean, what were you thinking of the game?
Yeah, it was. I kind of agree with Jeremy. It was a little bit dry at times,
Mhm.
especially in the first half. They were just kind of feeling each other out. But Inter played pretty well. I wasn't. I mean, I was expecting them to play tough, but I didn't think they'd play this hard. And yeah, there was a little bit of luck on City's side too. It seems because there were some chances, especially at the end, for Inter to maybe force it into overtime, which would have been fun. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I was expecting City to win, but I was pretty impressed with Inter. I thought they played really well. Obviously, we knew defensively they'd play well, but they actually had, some really good attempts on goal too, and they probably should have at least scored one.
Yeah, and I thought they did a really good job of frustrating City. Because I didn't actually necessarily look at what the overall stats was, but they did not have Holland had a couple chances here and there, but I think one stat I did see was at halftime. Uh, Jacko had more touches than Holland, which is not something that I was expecting. I made all these tweets being like, "Inter messed up." I thought starting Jacko,
Mm.
because that's I thought the comparison I was thinking in my head was this was similar to what France did with Giroud in the World Cup final. Like Jacko works if you have the ball and you a lot in the final third, you're able to kind of send some crosses in. Where Jacko can kind of be a pass a little bit. Jacko also had some pretty good touches when he did get the ball. Just it was far and few between. It seemed he was just kind of struggling a little bit to get in the game, and they were struggling to find him. And then when Lukaku came in, you kind of had the opposite problem. Like Lukaku offered you runs. He did have a couple of touches here and there, but his finishing was a little to be desired. I was thinking like the cruel thing is if you put Dzeko in this situation Lukaku was in, maybe he does do better. But that's just that's just kind of the roll of the dice kind of moment. To get started with City though, I do think Pep kind of threw a little curveball. We did see a bit of a lineup change. We saw Kyle Walker dropped for Akanji. Uh, it was a surprise to me because I spent a little of last week's show kind of talking up how good Kyle Walker had been. Maybe he was a little injured or something. Maybe he couldn't go the full 90. And Kanji came
Yeah.
in and had a big role in the goal that City scored, and then we saw Stones kind of played a little bit different. I mean, did you notice that? Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, yeah. Stones was moved up a little bit, and he had a couple really good passing plays from that position. I thought he did a pretty good job.
Hmm.
I'm still not sold on him though. Playing there, I think you could get someone better in the transfer window maybe. But yeah, I thought he did a good job. I thought I thought it worked pretty well, and Pep's kind of used it occasionally this season with Stones in that position. Sometimes it was like Lewis was in there too, so
Mhm.
yeah, it worked. It was pretty good, and Akanji played well also. It was a big call by Pep, and I mean, you can't argue with it. They got the clean sheet, so I think he did make the right call, the right decisions.
I think that's, like, the main thing, to touch on. You talk about the clean sheet because I do feel like well, I sometimes get guilty of this, where I kind of grade City on a curve. Because like at halftimes, one thing I was kind of, texting with Jeremy back and forth was, uh, yeah, that was not really the best first half, but I is was Inter really, did the Inter really, like, trouble them? City still have kind of the game going the way they want. They hadn't necessarily won the game at that point. Another thought I was thinking about is what's gonna happen with Kevin De Bruyne. Was that gonna show up?
Mhm.
Because that
Mhm.
was a big, moment in the game as well, which we can get to. But, the way that he played Stones was different. It almost seemed like him and Bernardo Silva took turns swapping between being like wing back, kinda like the furthest man on the wing, and kinda being in the right mid. But you're right, Stones, it seemed, was playing really far advanced, at least in that first half. It almost seemed like he was almost sometimes a decoy when he was making runs, like, off the ball, which I thought wasn't really the best way to play Stones. And you s really a lot of times, you saw Bernardo Silva, playing behind Stones. Silva was kind of the guy that was, I guess the right mid. But too often what I saw, at least in that first half, and I don't know if you noticed this as well, is I thought Raji was a little isolated, and it seemed Inter Milan were fine allowing Raji to have the ball, and they were marking everyone else. And it
Mhm.
seemed Bernardo Silva and Grealish, or I guess Stones in this part, were staying wide. They were doing well to stay wide, at least at that point, but they weren't really making runs and pushing Inter Milan back. So it was actually pretty
That's
easy
true.
for Inter
Yeah.
Milan to kind of play in a block. And in this game, unlike in the others that we had seen, it almost seemed Kevin De Bruyne's role in this City team, at least in these big games, had been to make runs off of Holland. Kevin De Bruyne was really the guy that was looking to try to get in behind, and as we saw, it seemed he came into this game maybe with a bum hamstring, and it
Mhm.
finally popped, and he just wasn't really able to
Mhm.
offer that, and just it was only Holland. Holland was the only one able to make a run to kind of threaten, and it really seemed like City were struggling to get, Kevin De Bruyne, Gundogan, Bernardo, and Grealish the ball to at least kind of be threatening to get in the ball in that danger area to then look for Holland, and that was the reason why Holland was struggling. So Inter Milan's
Mhm.
setup I thought was really good, to be honest. Like, it was like City kind of, played a role in that. But to be fair, it wasn't just Man City playing poor. Inter Milan made them look poor. They had a decent setup. They went into and a game plan and pulled it off, at least, for the most part. Um,
Yeah, that's important to say though that it wasn't just City played bad. It was Inter made City play bad. I like that because yeah, it really was. I mean, maybe City were a little. I mean, it's tough. Maybe they were a little bit, suffering from the hangover of winning the Premier League and winning the FA Cup. I don't know, but yeah, they didn't really play well. But credit to Inter, they were forcing City to play a certain way, and then the I think the second half, City kind of started to play better, turn the screw a little bit more.
mhm.
But with that came, more chances for Inter. So it was always a tough balancing act in this game.
Yeah, and when you do kind of talk to, like, try to break down games, it's hard to kind of focus on which side, to kind of to do that on, where it's like, if a certain result doesn't go the way you were expecting, you almost seems like the instinct is to kind of trash the team that was kind of favored to win, as opposed to kind of,
Right.
propping up the other team. Which
Yeah.
I'm sometimes guilty of that, to be honest. But one thing I did want to kind of, expand on is, at least in that first half, the reason why maybe City didn't click is it seemed like Man City were outnumbered a little bit in the middle third. In a way, this is something we don't normally see from a Pep Man City's side. So I mentioned how Rodri was the lone anchor, with Gundogan and Stones kind of ahead of him. And Inter were basically using their three in midfield, playing kind of narrow, kind of centrally, and they were just marking anyone ahead of them. They were marking Gundogan, Stones, and Kevin De Bruyne, and it seemed I feel like this is maybe where playing Stones differently, because in the past, we had seen Stones almost playing next to Rodri and kind of like a pivot. where
Yeah.
it just seemed Rodri was kind of struggling a little bit. Now Rodri had the majority of possession. I think he had something like 60 touches in that first half. Where I looked at Stones, Stones was like 30. So that showed up, and Rodri didn't really lose the ball. He still had like 90 plus
Yeah.
percent
He never
uh,
loses the ball.
pass accuracy, and we'll get to it once we get to the actual goal. It's fitting that Rodri is the goal scorer because I was trying to think of who is a player that has more exemplified Pep's style at City, and it probably is Rodri. Rodri is probably the like main guy of the Pep era, at least when you think of like the style that he's played. There's also been some controversy with him because he came in and he replaced Fernandinho. And it took a while, I thought, for Rodri to kind of get the hang of that position, and he's almost made it his own. He's almost become like I don't know Pep's Man City's Busquets in some ways. So it was very
Mhm.
fitting that he was the one that
Yeah,
that ended
sure.
up getting the goal. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, he does a lot of the dirty work, so it's nice to see him, get his name up on the score sheet and, the game-winning goal too. It's great because he doesn't score that much, even though he probably could, but, he holds that whole midfield together and does a lot of the running, a lot of the dirty work, so it's good to see him score, honestly.
I mean, have someone that just doesn't lose the ball, regardless of if you're being pressed. I saw there was a stat that happened at the end of the year where under pressure, the person that had like the highest percentage passing, and it was Rodri. It feels like that's him every single season. I think Inso was like second, which surprised me a little bit. But he
Huh.
doesn't make mistakes. So I mean, yeah, and to have that in the middle of the field is everything. Because
Yeah,
sometimes that's
absolutely.
the reason why sometimes you see teams playing with two instead of one. And it's because of that. You need a ball winner and someone that can make decisions with it. Rodri can kind of do both.
Yeah,
So in yeah.
absolutely.
But to kind of to expand on what I mentioned, how Inter were kind of playing. So one thing that was happening was City didn't have. I didn't feel like City had enough runners to maybe create some gaps for the ball to feet players. Gundogan and not necessarily Kevin De Bruyne. But Bernardo and Grealish, I guess would be examples where
Mhm.
uh, it was way too cluttered. It was too compact. So this is where you kind of need your wingers to try to make some runs to try to get in behind because I thought it was relatively easy for Inter to defend. Just kind of deny that ball into the middle if you can, and then just try to mark Holland. And in the past, this is again. This hadn't been an issue for City in a bunch of these games. You can think back to Arsenal in that big game versus Arsenal. Is it had been Kevin De Bruyne that was the one that was looking to try to make that disguised run, and Kevin De Bruyne wasn't able to do it. And City were struggling with that, I thought. And then when Foden came on, it was kind of a different dynamic. Though we'll get to when we get to the goal. The goal happens because of a run, a late run. It's funny is Foden makes a run into the box and he draws two or three defenders to kind of run with him, and that opens up Rodri who decided not to run, and he gets rewarded with that. But that's
Yeah.
just kind of when you have players that run without the ball, it opens things for others, and that's a thing that we've talked about. I feel like this entire season. And another thing too, when we get to the goal, is Inter kind of ball watched a little bit, where instead of seeing trying to mark where everyone
Mhm.
was, they just kind of went where the ball was, and then they marked someone running ahead of them. And it was really the one time that Inter switched off. So.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And with Enter, with the ball, I did feel like Brozovic and Anana are kind of the two players to maybe praise. I did feel like Brozovic didn't really have a bad game either. To be honest, I thought he was pretty good in possession. He kind of did what we were expecting, where he was kind of dropping deep, he was getting the ball, and he helped Enter kind of have possession a little bit. If there was maybe a critique, he maybe didn't go direct enough. But then again, in that first half, Dzeko wasn't really the guy trying to make that run, and Lautaro Martinez doesn't really have the legs to do that either. Um, and I thought Inter were a little bit better in the second half when they did just decide to just uh, throw Hail Mary attempts essentially, just kind of kick a ball into the box. Who knows what will happen? We saw Anana actually being really really good with the kind of decisions he was making. He was maybe if there was a person that maybe impressed a potential team, I think it was Onana, the Inter goalkeeper. Not just with kind of the saves he made, but he was quite good with the ball at his feet. Almost kind of and attacking option for them. The way he was able to kind of,
Mhm.
thread some balls upfield, get him to feet, and it led Inter into a couple of, one of their better attacks. So, um,
He had some good throws too. Yeah, some great throws as well, kind of showing off all types of goalkeeper distribution.
and I get another player to maybe touch on was I thought Dumfries. We talked up Dumfries last week. I thought maybe he would kind of be helpful for their attacking outlet. He wasn't necessarily bad defensively. He kind of bullied Grealish, to be honest. But there was one time when he did kind of get the ball when Inter, I think it was in the first half as well. Inter did very well to find him, and it almost seemed like he froze. He got the ball. He got the ball in like the top of the box, and he like didn't know what to do. And basically, I think he ended up just kind of holding onto the ball and then like passing it backwards, and then Inter had to like recycle possession. Nothing came from it. So he kind of was poor, and the guy that actually was good for them was on the other side, and he played over Gosens. I was expecting Gosens, and it was Chris DeMarco, and DeMarco was quite good for them in a way I
Yeah,
wasn't really expecting, and maybe he kind of benefited by not having to go against Kyle Walker because it seemed Stones or Kanji, was basically kind of, I guess, kind of marking him or supposed to be marking him. Stones sometimes didn't really know what his role was. I thought. But Akanji was actually forced into some not great 1v1s that I thought when DeMarco was able to get the ball in the wing, he had some really good service into the box. And one of the chances that Inter had in that second half is DeMarco kind of he sent the cross in, and then after some chaos, after Inter was able to win a couple headers into the box, DeMarco continued his run and was able to kind of beat. I think he beat Bernardo Silva to a ball, and they almost scored on this. So
mm,
yeah,
yeah. And Demarco almost scored later on too when a certain member of his own team blocked a shot that looked like it was going to be a
yeah,
goal.
yeah. It was in like the same sequence. Where I that one I can't fault Lukaku.
No, yeah, you
We can
can't.
fault
Yeah,
Lukaku for the other stuff. Um,
yeah, but that was like, yeah, you can't avoid that, unfortunately.
And another thing I saw was Inter were very, very aggressive in 50-50 balls in a way we normally don't see teams go at City, which I thought, if anything, I feel like Premier League teams can look at how Inter kind of played City, to be honest, because they were aggressive in the challenging. I thought they were tight on Haaland. They were trying to deny him. They weren't allowing him to get the ball in turn. Whoever Acerbi, Damian, whoever Bastoni, were trying to get as tight on Haaland as possible, and sometimes fouling him. With the referees maybe letting them play on a little bit, but I thought they were aggressive. They were going to ground. Inter were pretty good without the ball. Um,
Yeah, they were. They did a lot of hard work, which they had to do. I mean, we knew that they would have to do that, and they did. They did a good job defensively.
and so I think my kind of full time first take was okay, 'cause I think I mentioned it before. I sometimes get caught on grading City on a curve, but yeah, I guess in the other way, pragmatism I guess can win finals. Pep sides can win. I guess playing that way too. It's fitting that Pep actually wins the final um, by uh, by actually maybe not necessarily playing a Pep Paul. To be honest, he played the three center backs. He actually played the way he played Akanji and Stones. It seemed the idea really was to not deny anything or to deny anything behind them. It seemed like he kind of set up that way. It was interesting to see Ake get a start. And Ake was fantastic as well. We mentioned how
Mm.
he was maybe healthy. I was expecting maybe Ake could come on as kind of a change of pace thing or a second half option, and it was Kyle Walker that was resorted to doing that. But again, at halftime, it was 0-0. You watched CBS commentary, and they were kind of acting, oh no, is this has Pep messed it up? Has he overthought things? There was that kind of mindset going on. And if anything, I thought the only thing that was maybe concerning was I was wondering how they were going to get by missing Kevin De Bruyne, knowing how important he had been. And because Foden came on, I thought it took a while for him to actually get involved in the game. Though in the second half he did shine a little bit, and it is Foden. Foden's responsible for the first goal, and he maybe was responsible for City's best chance to get a second goal. But yeah,
Yeah, true.
it wasn't a pretty Pep game or masterclass. It was, I mean, the XG was .9 for City and 2 for Enter, which I think is worth saying.
Yeah, 2 is ugh.
So I mean, to kind of quickly go over the game, I'll go over the chances like we normally do, and then we'll kind of I guess go a little bit more in depth, a little bit more into City and Enter, and then kind of wrap it up. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about transfer news. We do have USA playing Mexico tonight, which we can maybe kind of touch on as well. We're not making a long show, Rex. I promise. I mean, the first chance did come Man City's way. This is 4 minutes in. I think it's Bernardo. Is it Bernardo Silva? It's Bernardo Silva. Like, kind of gets the ball. It's only the one time when Demarco I thought like maybe switched off, and he had a chance to get a shot off, and I think it just missed wide. Um, but that was after that you were like, well, is this going to be like one of those games where Inter have to like pray that Man City misses like 20 chances. And not no not really. Then there was another chance that Holland was able to kind of get a try off. It's one of the few times when they were able to kind of find him the ball. And his shot I think goes over the bar and he's off sides, but Inter did get caught kind of playing from the back. Um, and then let's see. Uh, there was a DeMarco cross, maybe the best chance for Enter. There was a DeMarco cross. It forced Diaz to finally work. So it was a decent. It was like the first chance where Enter had a pretty decent play. This was the first, like 10 minutes in, and that's another thing too. I've got Ruben Diaz's name a lot in that first half. It's almost arguable that Ruben Diaz was their best player in the first half, and I feel like that's a good example to kind of say how the game was going. It's not necessarily like Ederson was forced into making a bunch of saves. But Ruben Diaz was forced to be a hero in some respects to deny Inter, to maybe force Ederson into working, and it's and like just to say Ruben Diaz was so important to them, or I guess Roger, you could say that as well. That that's not one of City's kind of attacking players, so that just kind of showed how the game was going, at least for them. Because there was another
Yeah.
chance where Ruben Diaz denied Lautaro Martinez kind of getting the ball in almost like City's box. He had an amazing tackle here.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And then let's see, intercept. Then Demarco had a good chance, or he found a Brozovic, and Brozovic had a shot and went over the bar. But one of the notes I had was I didn't think City's gambit of playing stones kind of out wide and far up. I didn't really feel it was working, to be honest. And then I've got Edison make a couple of sloppy mistakes in a row where they got lucky. The Nico Barella's shot, it was an open goal, and he had the shot off target. If he has a little bit more composure and he gets that at least on goal, I think that goes in. I don't think Ederson can get back in time. So well, it's worth kind of saying that because Ederson got made up for it in the second half with some of the saves he had.
Mhm.
He was arguably player of the game in his own right. And then I've got maybe the first big chance for City. Did go Holland's way, and it was the one time when Kevin De Bruyne was able to get the ball in kind of a danger area in the final third. They finally were able to do some really good passing together. I think there was like a Gundogan moment with like a one touch. They were able to get Kevin De Bruyne the ball, and then he was able to find a nice kind of slipped ball into Holland to run onto where Holland did a really good job to beat Bastoni, and I think Bastoni does a really good job not to foul Holland because he easily could have stuck a leg out and brought him down. Holland does get by him and does force a decent leg save, but by Onana. Um, and 25 minutes in, this is really the first significant chance I would say. Oh, maybe the Bernardo Silva chance. But yeah, it took a while for City kind of time to get through. Um,
It did.
and then Kevin De Bruyne had a shot in kind of the 30th minute. This was right at Onana, so a lot of this started to happen kind of in quick succession. And then about the 32nd minute, he needed treatment for a scare, and then 5 minutes later, he came off. Um,
Yeah. Ugh.
and I mean, kind of to pause it there. Do you want to maybe touch on that because it's so unfortunate. I feel for him because it seems he's a player that it's not necessarily like it's gonna be like a legacy, defining thing, because, he had his eye socket, like, broken, in one final,
Mhm.
and he rips his hamstring, going for a ball, at least, trying to gut it out, and it's possible
Yeah.
because he didn't go off after the scare, he made it worse, and he might have some issues, getting back to fitness next
Jeez.
season. So
Yeah.
no one should be going after him, in my opinion, I have seen that on Twitter, or at least, on social media, but it's just, it feels like he's been a player that's been deserving of a big moment, and it hasn't necessarily happened in a final like this or for Belgium, which, he's had all of his moments, in the EPL for Pep. But, yeah, it
Mm.
just feels, a little unfortunate, but
Yeah, at least he got to play this time, but it looks like he completely tore it now. He was playing with a slight tear. Now he completely tore it, so I think he'll be out for like 3 months at least. I don't know if surgery is needed yet, but yeah, it's a grade three, so playing on it. He definitely like tore it completely. But I think it's worth it. He kind of mentioned that too. He was kind of like, "I'll take it." Um, and yeah, it kind of stinks, but at least he got to play 30 minutes, and it's still the treble winning season, and he was really really influential. And the last 2 months he played hurt. It kind of is like, oh, okay, that's why he wasn't playing as much. I was getting worried that maybe him and Pep are like butting heads or something. Like there might have
yeah,
been something brewing like the Cancella thing, but it turns out it was the hamstring. So that's like okay, that makes more sense.
and
But yeah, he could miss the start of the season.
and
We'll see.
we talked about that throughout the entire season. We thought that, Pep was managing his minutes kind of just kinda being savvy, and maybe it was just kinda forced, to do that.
Yep,
And this
you just
maybe
get
is
whatever you can from him.
this maybe is one of the few times where, um, the World Cup did kind of show up, at least on a player. It's impossible to actually know for certain. Um, but he did give it a go, for Belgium, being important enough, for them as well. And
Mhm.
I mentioned how Rodri is maybe the most like Pep era defining player, but that's because he exemplifies what Pep ball I guess is. In many respects, Kevin De Bruyne is the opposite of Pep ball. He's a player that it almost like without someone like Kevin De Bruyne, this doesn't work. Sometimes you need someone to just be individually brilliant, someone that can has kind of a free role to pick out the right pass to maybe take a little risk here and there because sometimes Pep doesn't like attackers doing that. Um,
Yeah. Mhm.
and someone like Kevin De Bruyne has been so influential for them. I feel like hearing a grade three hamstring tear at 32 or whatever his age is, maybe he doesn't necessarily come back from that. And if even if he doesn't, I would say Kevin De Bruyne is easily in the top three for best midfields ever in the league. I think he's
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
he's been a midfielder of the defining era, and people will talk about Modric, Cruz, for Madrid, and Liverpool fans like talking up Steven Gerrard. I feel like Kevin De Bruyne is what Liverpool fans think Steven Gerrard was, to be honest,
Mm.
because I just haven't. I've always been amazed that I've never really seen a weakness to his game. He does defensive work. He runs back. He has pace to him that you wouldn't really expect, and it just seems every kind of year he's also found a way to uh, kind of revamp his game a little bit. Maybe the knock you could say is he has had some injury issues. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
That's the one thing I would say.
because he didn't he have one season where he actually had like 20 assists, or
Oh
or
yeah,
or,
yeah.
or
I'm
was
not
going
surprised. Yeah,
or was going to get that, and then like maybe he had
and
to
then
miss
got hurt.
a game or two. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, I think he had at some point an insane amount of assists. It was like 10 assists in like 10 games or something crazy. It was wild. And then yeah, he got a little. He was hobbled by an ankle. I can't remember. But yeah, maybe that's the only thing is a little bit of I wouldn't say injury prone, but he does pick up some injuries from time to time. And the older he gets, the harder and longer it's going to be to come back from those things. Which is basically what you're saying about the hamstring. We don't know how long it'll take him to come back from that.
Yeah. I mean, and we'll maybe get into a discussion maybe later on, like, because everyone's like, "Oh, is this the best Man City team or is the best like team ever?" I guess in the EPL era, because people have been talking about the treble and what Man United did in '99. I don't even think it's the best City team. I can think of when City had De Bruyne, when they had David Silva, when they had the inform Fernandinho, when they had Sterling and uh, Leroy Sané, options, and
Mhm.
they had Aguero and Kevin De Bruyne. That to me, that to me, maybe they didn't necessarily win as much as maybe this team, but I feel like they yeah,
No, it's
that
better.
was the team that maybe even won the, won the Centennial, with the 100 points. But that to me, I think is the
Oh,
best.
yeah, I think so.
That to me is the best team, that Pep's ever had.
Mm,
And the only reason why they
mm,
didn't maybe win the treble is because Liverpool got them, on a Champions League. Uh,
that's right, yeah. Mm,
but, I mean, the second half stats, I have, so Pep, I thought Pep was still kind of, maybe making a mistake, playing, Stones a little higher than Rodri. I've got Pep's wing pair not really beating anyone. So I thought that was kind of an issue too. 'Cause, like, Bernardo Silva would get the ball and he would just kind of, he can't really do anything, so passes backwards. Grealish, I thought was almost, he was almost a spectator, in many
mm,
respects. So when we get to the goal, both obviously played a big role. And then there was a chance for Inter. I mean, this really was Inter's moment, and it maybe didn't come off. Maybe it woke up City. So this is in the 58th minute. Ederson's forced into a save after a horror back pass by I think Bernardo Silva, but it's bad communication by Akanji. I don't know if you remember this. So it's like
yeah,
Lautaro Martinez gets the ball free, and there's maybe a square ball on, but Martinez ignores it and tries to go for it. Ederson's legs are open, so maybe he is trying to maybe kind of thread it underneath, and he just hit it too high. Because if this is on the ground, I think it goes through him. But Ederson is
mm,
able to be big, and he basically he keeps the game from being one down. But after that, that was really that really did wake City up. I thought after that, City started to have more of the ball. It seemed Inter's legs were tiring, trying to chase it a little bit more. Um, because in the 63rd minute, this happens before the goal. You see Stones overlaps Bernardo Silva, and takes his cross is deflected out of bounds, but it's very similar to what happens with the goal. In fact, one of the things I tweeted was, if this was Kyle Walker, maybe he does a better job. Maybe Pep should have played Kyle Walker instead. That turned out to be
mm.
probably a bad take. Because and then there was a big Bastoni defensive play to stop Holland. When it seemed like Holland was able to kind of get a ball and try to maybe thread a pass to Foden. Uh, or maybe Foden was trying to thread a pass to Holland, but there was City were starting to click a little bit, and then you finally see the goal, and it is from Rodri. And what happens is Bernardo Silva kind of finally gets in behind and does a cut back cross to find Rodri, who basically just kind of passes into the net. It's a really nice hit, but this before this goal happens, it's almost a masterclass by Bernardo Silva on how to avoid being pressed. Before any of this happens, so you see elite ball retention. Because he spins with Demarco, he almost like draws like three Inter players to leave their mark to try to help out on him, and that ends up kind of hurting up, and that ends up showing up. Uh, but because what happens is once that happens, City are able to overload the other side. And so, Bernardo can't really get past people, but he can evade people. He can spin them around. He can body feint them to death. And then Gunnigan wins
Mhm.
a 50-50 ball in the box to keep it from going out of bounds. And then he finds Phil Foden. And Phil Foden does really well to drag into players to run at him. And Foden gets it to Akanji. Akanji gets the ball in space, and then Akanji has Stones and Bernardo making time runs. So uh, he's got Bernardo Silva, making a clever run in the kind of in the center of the box, and then he's got Stones kind of making a run outside. And I'm trying to think if I was playing, or at least watching it, from the TV angle, it seems Stones is the obvious play. Stones is obviously the easier ball. How he even sees Bernardo Silva's run is amazing. This is an incredible pass by Akanji. Uh,
Oh, it really was.
Bastoni
Yeah,
loses Bernardo Silva. I don't think Bastoni thought Akanji could play this or see this. And then Bernardo Silva gets the ball and then squares it, and then it kind of deflects towards Rodri, and Rodri just smashes it in. But it's an elite pass by
great finish.
Akanji. It's an elite pass by
Mhm.
Akanji. Stones, yeah, Stones does a good job to at least make the run himself. So that at least maybe forces Enter to kind of think about that. But another reason this happens is Grealish decides to take a risk for a change because he floats the ball into the penalty area when Gunnigan wins that 50-50 ball. Or I guess like Foden, yeah, he's floating it to Foden and then Gunnigan wins the 50-50 ball. But if Grealish had been trying to find feet, he would have had to go backwards. He would have had to recycle possession. It was like the first time when City were trying to kind of be a little direct and take a little risk, and it's Yeah, it's possible that this doesn't come off and, Inter win the ball and they just kinda kick it upfield, and there goes the chance. But, the clever, feet ball to feet, stuff wasn't really working. Yeah, that time required, someone taking a chance, and Grealish did. So it's worth kind
Yeah.
of saying that as well. Um,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Because he, and especially because he's someone that has kind of struggled to settle down to life in Man City, and last year was a big struggle. This year, he's starting to settle down and get better, and next year I expect him to be even better than he was this year. So yeah, I'm happy for him. He's a good player, and he's starting to kind of show why City spent all that money on him.
Well, it is interesting. I mean, I feel like that could maybe still be, in contention, to be honest, and the reason why I say that is he still didn't have his numbers still weren't great, for as many games as he played and minutes. He still didn't have n I don't think he had more than 7 goals across all competitions.
Yeah,
I might be
I
wrong on
think he
that.
ended up. No, I think you're right. I think he had 7 goals and 11 assists in all competitions. So
Okay,
yeah, yeah, they're not what we're necessarily used to, but it's still better than last year. So it's still like a
true.
building block, I
Yeah.
think, for him. Hopefully,
Th
hopefully.
that's what I'm saying. Because it seems like his role in the team is almost to just, get the ball and don't lose it. When you get the ball in the wing, drive people, maybe cut inside, run with it, maybe take players out of position, essentially. But it's not his goal. His role isn't to do what he was doing with Aston Villa because Grealish was one of the best. When he was with Villa, again, different team, different setup. When you're playing with a team that was like maybe fighting relegation or whatnot. But Grealish was responsible for second highest in chance creation that season before
Oh
before he
yeah.
moved to City. And just we
Mhm.
haven't necessarily seen that yet. But uh,
Yeah,
to,
yeah, yeah.
to touch on the goal again, I want to I think I already said it, but I'll repeat it. Inter's mistake is no one bothers staying tight on Rodri, and then kind of ball watch. Foden makes that run to draw. I think Chananagu and Brozovic both follow Foden, and Demarco slips and can't recover in time. So Rodri just kind of gets the ball, and there's literally no one around him. So
Mm,
one note I wanted to put down here is a common saying, I think, something I think we have said on this podcast is, make sure you mark the late runners, especially when you play someone like City. But I'm starting to think maybe that's not accurate because I think the bigger problem in covering these games the entire year is ball watching. Because you can mark late runners
mm.
all you want. If you leave a guy open still who doesn't run, you've still left yourself vulnerable. And I feel like that's been a theme
It's
in
true.
some of these games as well.
Yeah.
And it's another example of how important running without the ball is, even in tight spaces. It's not even just to, try to get behind like a high line. Even in a tight space like a box, just a run to kind of get a defender to move their feet just 3 or 4 feet, is enough to create a passing lane. So it's worth kind of saying that as well.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. You got to stay on your toes and always move.
And then we'll get to a couple of chances that did go to Ender's way. It's the Demarco one that Lukaku blocks that you brought up. And it's this time Man City get caught ball watching. They allow Demarco to continue his run, and he I think Dumfries wins the first header, and then Demarco wins a header. Lukaku almost bodies Akanji to the ground. It was maybe a foul. I was kind of surprised the announcers didn't really say it. That's the reason why DeMarco gets the ball and he has like a free header. Um, and the only thing I was thinking about is could DeMarco have done better? Could he have there's no one around him. He obviously you're in the moment. You're probably your brain is going 5,000 things at once. So that's maybe harsh, but
Mhm.
he maybe could have chested it down. Honestly, I was thinking maybe he could have tried a somersault kick. But maybe he thought just
Ooh.
the header was the easier option. But because the ball is just like floating, he has to generate all this power himself. And I think that's the reason
Yeah.
why he floats it and it can only hit the crossbar.
Yeah, yeah, you gotta if you want a power header, the ball has to have a lot of pace, and yeah, when it's a floated ball like that, it's just hard to generate a lot of power to beat the keeper, especially with a header.
And then there's a chance it fell Lukaku's way. They forced that into making a save, so it's worth saying that. Inter created the chance by being a little more direct. So it's just like a long ball. I think either Lautaro Martinez or it might even be Lukaku who yeah, it's Lautaro Martinez gets the ball and then finds Lukaku, and Lukaku does well to kind of I think he takes Ake on and he gets a shot off, and The unfortunate thing is, if this is on any kind of, because it's got good power, if this is on either side of the post, Ederson's maybe is in trouble, but it goes right to Ederson, and it's pretty easy save. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, there's a
then
slight deflection, wasn't there? I think.
maybe what there maybe has been.
Maybe a tiny, tiny one?
I think you're right. Yeah, it was impossible to
I
see that
thought, but
live, but once they went to the replay, I think you're right.
replay, yeah,
Ake
yeah.
might
It's
have
a
actually
tiny one.
gotten something. That's worth saying as well. Again, that's not the reason people are going to go at Lukaku. If something happens later.
Yeah.
And then there's the chance that Foden had that we mentioned. It's almost a perfect. I think that this would have been a perfect way to clinch the title. One, because Foden is like Pep's son, it seems, because he's been playing him since like 16. But he has a fantastic spin and turn, and he creates a scoring opportunity all by himself, and he's able to get past like every Inter defender, and he just has Onana to beat, and he doesn't fool him. Laces.
Mhm.
It's surprising he didn't try to do like put something with his laces through it. Instead, he tried to like kind of side foot pass it, and yeah, he doesn't. It's not enough power to beat Onana, and Onana gets the right way anyways. Um,
Mhm.
and then let's see. I've got a chance. Oh, this is the one. In the 89th minute, Lukaku does get a chance where there was kind of someone won the header up, and then the ball kind of just found Lukaku, and it's Lukaku at least does a good job to get enough power on it. And again, if any other side of Ederson, this goes in and everyone's praising him. Again, it's another chance where City kind of looked vulnerable a little bit, like we saw versus Brentford, and we saw versus I guess maybe versus Man United in an FA game a little bit later. So there was kind of that opportunity, and Lukaku did kind of get his head on it, and it's just he headed it right to Ederson. I don't think Ederson maybe moved a little bit, and it just kind of hit his knee. Again, I'm trying to think. Jacko probably does bear this, but it is what
Mhm.
it is.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, and then and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
and then in the 93rd minute, it was probably the last kick of the game where Ederson has a massive hand stop to someone does like a near post run and kind of flicks it, and I think this is going in. And it's a fantastic save by Ederson, and Ederson was big, for City towards the end,
Yeah.
so it's worth kind of saying that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you didn't have to do much until the end, so it's a fair play on him to like stay in the game and make sure he's ready. Even if like he's like we said, he went the whole game without having to do a lot, and then had to be huge at the end. So fair play to him. He's been good all year, and he's been good with his distribution. So it's good to see him kind of step up, and he didn't just sit back and do nothing in this game. He had
Mhm.
to make some huge saves to preserve that win.
Yep, especially that one, before City even got that Rodri goal where, he was big on, Lautaro Martinez.
Yeah,
Let's see. Although I guess you could maybe argue if Ederson had come out, after, the way Akanji wanted, maybe, that he looked Martinez shouldn't have been able to get the ball, but anyways. What we'll
yeah,
do
yeah.
is
Maybe,
I
maybe.
think we'll focus on Inter first, and then go to City. Because, some of the takes, Barella and Çalhanoğlu, I did feel like had poor games, at least, Brozovic was good, but that Inter midfield three, I thought all three had to have really good games for Inter to really have a chance. And while they did a good job without the ball, I thought at least two of them were poor on it, especially Barella. I was expecting a little bit better from him. And
Hmm.
Yeah, it seemed like Sean Lager, maybe the stage was a little too big for him. There was one chance when it did seem, he had a chance to have a rocket shot, and I think it's deflected by Ruben Diaz. But yeah, it just seemed they weren't really able to find Jacko the ball enough, or they weren't able to beat their man enough. And I thought that was really what Inter kind of needed, because they didn't really have any of that runs themselves. Really, the outlet was like Demarco and kind of Dumfries, the two that
Hmm.
were able to kind of beat their man the most part. And when you're looking at how you're setting up, um, when you have a winger that or a wingback that beats your man, that really doesn't. If you're a City, that doesn't really affect you that much. You still have a back three, and you can still kind of mark people ahead. So I thought that
That's
was kind
true.
of worth saying. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, that's true.
and then positives, Onana, which we kind of brought up, and Brozovic
He
and
was big.
DeMarco. Yeah, and
Yeah,
yeah,
DeMarco.
with I guess negatives. Necessarily like saying the negatives, but It does feel Lukaku had a chance to just completely change the narrative about him. I remember people. I remember in the World Cup, he had a really interesting game for Belgium. This was also when he was kind of hurt, but I think he hit like the post in like 2 or 3 times, kind of from like really close distance in a big Belgium game when they ended up kind of bouncing out of the World Cup. And it was for versus Croatia. And it feels like this was maybe kind of similar time where, yeah, it just seemed, if a bounce here and there had it gone differently, everyone's looking at Lukaku differently. And,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was a big chance for him, and he just wasn't able to, unfortunately, what just the bounce didn't go as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's sometimes it's as cruel as that, just a unlucky bounce.
Because it's not like these were necessarily sitters, because he did do a good job to get some power on the header and get his power on the shot, but it just kind of went towards Ederson. It also seemed, maybe his pressing or wasn't the same as what Dzeko was doing. That's worth kind of saying that as well. It did seem to he had the runs to kind of get behind, like I was maybe expecting, but it is what it is. And then,
Yeah.
I thought Lautaro Martinez, I thought had a chance to kind of do the same thing, because there's kind of been a narrative around him a little bit, kind of in the big moments, maybe he's kind of flopped sometimes, and his decision making, I thought was poor. To be fair
Mm,
to him, he did have a big PK to I think beat the Netherlands in the World Cup. So it's not like he's had a bad season or a bad year.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it felt like this was maybe the time for Martinez to do to kind of do his hello world moment as well, and it just didn't work out for him. Um,
Yeah, yeah, just not his day.
but you mentioned it a little bit, because we talked about it last week, how we both kind of thought it was important for Serie A to at least be competitive, and I think in that respect they were. So to be fair to them, for that, we did feel like Inter were going into the game. We felt Inter were going to be overmatched, and they did well to stay in the game. But outside a few chances, it only felt like one side was going to win this as well.
Yeah,
I kind of thought, if Serie A was going to have a representative, it maybe would have been better to have Napoli. Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
because even with Inter chasing the game, the coach made some subs, and it was interesting to see Bastoni come off. But he stuck to a back three. He moved DeMarco back into like a center back role instead of being a wing back. DeMarco was kind of better attackers. So it
He
just seemed
was. Yeah.
they weren't really able to go at it a little bit more. They didn't really have any of the options. And looking, Jeremy kind of mentioned, when you look at where Alex, when you look at the finances, Inter's kind of struggling a little bit here. All of their players have basically been on loan or bought on freeze, for the last 2 seasons, and it's so much different when you look at, we've mentioned how Man City were able to get a Kanji for like a relatively cheap price, and a Kanji would have been their most expensive like transfer, Inter's most expensive like transfer, of like the last 2 seasons.
Right.
So that just kind of shows
Yeah,
there was a serious disparity here, and it's worth mentioning that
yeah,
as well.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, we know how much City spend, and so it's fair to contrast the spending or the lack of spending that Inter does. It's yeah, the wage bills are very different. The transfer budget is completely different. So yeah, I mean, props for Inter for even making it this far with the budget they had.
hmm Yeah, because I think the only player that they've purchased, is Jesus Correa, and I think he's on Mexico.
It's been hurt.
And
Yeah,
he wasn't even able
yeah,
to go this final. And what's funny is, I don't necessarily know if he would have, necessarily helped out or not. But they did have Alexis Sanchez last year, and they loaned him out or sent
hmm
him out to Marseille, and he was one of the players of the season in the French league this past season. He had something like
yeah,
17,
yeah. He had a good
18,
year.
18 goals with a bunch of assists. And it's just, maybe someone like him just to come on the bench, maybe would have helped out, but it just seemed Inter didn't really have, they were starved, for options. So,
Yeah,
for them to at least
yeah.
get
That's what stinks.
yeah, for them to at least get here
So if
is good. And done.
Yeah. Yeah, because well, if it's not working, then there's nothing you can really do to change the attack from the bench, and then you go to the other side and City. There's so much talent that De Bruyne gets hurt early, and you can just bring in Foden, and so many other players. So yeah, like depth is huge in the Champions League, and I think that played a part in this game as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's Inter's reward. They were able to get through AC Milan, and it's I mentioned it would have been Serie A. It probably would have been better for them as a league to have Napoli face them, but Napoli weren't able to beat AC Milan and Inter were. Is what they're kind of saying that. So
Yeah.
to go on to Man City. We talked about Kevin De Bruyne. We can get back to that. The positives I had was i- in some cases I don't necessarily. This is maybe kind of being a little takey. Maybe Ederson was one of their players of the season as well. Fault and all, because it seemed something changed after February. Um, I thought he was maybe one of their weaker points, and
Mhm.
you look back and from February and March on, he was amazing. He had a bunch of really key saves, in moments, and it's fitting that that happened as well. And maybe him, Rodri, and maybe Ruben Diaz. It's kind of fitting that maybe those three are arguably the three players of the game, and
Mhm.
again, all three are kind of Pep defining. And another thing that's fitting is all three have kind of replaced, I don't wanna say city legends, but, Ederson came on, and Ederson, he replaced Joe Hart, if you remember, and Joe Hart was like, England's, special boy.
Yeah.
And it was the way Pep, brought Ederson to the league, and he almost changed how we look at goalkeepers. I think it almost feels like Pep was kind of the first one to kind of do that. At least Ederson was the first one to really be like, that whole saying about Brazilian keepers can basically be out in the outfield. Ederson was the first one to kind of show there's an argument for that.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and then Rodri came in replacing Fernandinho, and Ruben Diaz came in and he replaced Laporte. And Laporte was having a really good season. There were comparisons to Virgil van Dijk, and then Laporte got injured with his ACL, and it seems like Laporte hasn't really been able to recover. But Ruben Diaz has come in, and since he's been able to find form, it's arguable that he actually was their player of the season as well. Yeah, everyone's going to mention Holland and whatnot. Holland has had a role, but City. So the reason why City have won this, the treble or whatnot, is they've been a rock defensively. Ruben Diaz has kind of been the man of that defense.
Yeah, he's been good. He was huge in this game too.
Let's see. And then negatives, I mentioned how, Grealish and Bernardo Silva maybe could have done a little bit better, but there's no need to necessarily, focus on that again. Though next season, they might be losing Bernardo Silva. Uh, City might have some issues here. If you don't have, maybe you don't have Kevin De Bruyne to start the season.
Yeah.
Is Holland enough to? Well, Holland is the only guy that makes your runs, where City don't necessarily always have to push a lot of numbers forward. You just have, you have Holland that kind of does that. Can you rely on that for another season again? But that's something that they
Mm.
don't really care about. Um,
No, I don't think so. Yeah. We got Alvarez too, so
and City's reward for facing Inter is they did go through Bayern and they did go through Real Madrid in knockouts. We'll kind of start here. How meaningful is this for City to get their first Champions League win? Because it was interesting how even CBS was like everyone kind of felt it was going to happen eventually, and they focused more on the treble than necessarily just the actual Champions League. But I think I don't
yeah.
know. It's the first of like the I want to say Arab owners, but like the Dubai ownership. It's the first one that they've been able to win. PSG's owners have been trying to go for this. They haven't been able to get it. And you look at who Man United are now linked to. It's similar kind of ownership. We know Newcastle have the Saudi owners. Is this maybe a taste of what's maybe to come, or is it
Yeah.
just kind of look at City as City's been unique because they have Pep? I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, they are unique because they do have Pep, but the ability to spend all that money every season. I mean, they spent a lot of money to get to where they are in the like lifting the Champions League. So yeah, I mean, I think times are changing and they're continuing to change because you see more and more of this oil money coming in, and these clubs can kind of buy whoever they want to every year without punishment. So yeah, it's kind of like you're gonna have to do it to kind of keep up, or else you're gonna be stuck in the middle of the table. And you're not even going to be in the Champions League. And if you are in the Champions League, you just got to continue strengthening your, your bench and, just continue because City was doing so well and they didn't stop. They weren't like, okay, we can take our foot off the gas. They still won that Champions League. So they just kept spending. And now they have this juggernaut team where, Pep can rest players and they still win. Pep can rest players in FA Cup games and they still win. So yeah, I think things are starting to change a little bit, unfortunately. And I think you'll see again this summer there'll be a bunch of people being bought again, kind of like the last couple windows.
Well, it almost seems they're gonna have to do that because there's been a lot of speculation out there that Gunnigan is going to leave. We don't necessarily know if Barca's been linked heavily. I don't know how Barca have money and they're able to do this, but
Yeah, I
there,
don't
there,
know.
there there's a lot of links about that. Bernardo Silva's been linked to PSG. I've seen that a lot, and Mahrez
Mhm.
is heavily linked to maybe joining a club in Saudi Arabia. So I mean, those are three key players. Mahrez didn't necessarily feature in this game, but but Bernardo Silva played the played the whole game. Those are
Yeah,
three key players that you're going to have to replace somehow. And it's not always easy
absolutely.
to go out in the market and just bring a bunch of like, new players that can fit in the Pep's side. We saw Grealish. It took an entire year for him to get used to
Mhm.
this kind of style. So I think it's relevant that they were able to win it this time, because it does seem the city possibly is going to have a rebuild next year.
Yeah,
We'll see.
a mini
Uh,
rebuild or whatever. Yeah,
and
yeah, it's a good point.
maybe Kevin De Bruyne isn't able to go. The start of next season. Is Foden is that a Palmer guy? I know they
Mhm.
have James McAtee on loan, but I don't necessarily do you trust him to have a significant stretch? Maybe we see Rico Lewis a little bit more. Maybe Rico Lewis is kind of the idea, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Yeah, we'll see what Pep has in mind.
So another thing I wanted to ask you is Thierry Henry on CBS brought up kind of forgetting City a little bit. What does this do for Pep's legacy? I think it's two trebles with different clubs, and maybe the kind of the key one is he finally gets one without Messi. He finally wins the Champions League without Messi because that was always kind of been the knock, being like, oh, well, you won at Barcelona because you had Messi, because he wasn't able to do it at Bayern, and I don't know. There was a discussion. Oh, he's the best one ever. Best club manager. And I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously there's an argument to be made that he is the best club manager ever.
I
But
see.
yeah, I
Well,
mean, I,
I've
th- I
got
think
a.
well,
Sorry. I don't mean to necessarily cut you off. I'm trying to not be distracted by maybe you're biased with the hat you're wearing.
oh yeah, I forgot.
Sorry.
Well, yeah. I mean, uh, I don't know. Yeah, we'll see what happens, but yeah, I don't know. I think he is cemented already. But this just cements it even more. And yeah, the winning without Messi is a part of it, unfortunately for Pep, because he can't help that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just gonna make Pep even hungrier though, and I think he will be one of the, if not the best, by the time he's done managing. But I mean, he already is probably already. If not, he's like right behind Fergie and some of the other guys, I guess.
Yeah, because he's changed. He's come into the league. He's done things that a bunch of the English pundits were like, "Oh, it'll never work here. You can't play a positionless football. Essentially, you can't have everyone that's good at the ball at their feet." There was a lot of talks about that in his first year. He struggled. I think they finished fourth, and then there was a lot of talks that summer, or at least maybe he came here. Did he come here and did he get a full season? Maybe he only had half a season. I forget. But his first year
Um,
wasn't necessarily great. There was a lot of talks that summer. Oh, this is going to be, maybe Pep's going to be washed out. This is going to work in England. And then what does he do that next following season? He gets the 100 points in this season. And
mhm.
he's just changed. He's changed how people look at possession. He's changed a lot of things. And the only thing I can maybe say is I feel like the league, or at least the game, needs maybe something else. We keep mentioning up De Zerbi. It does feel like he's maybe the next guy to come into a league and to have different ideas, because sometimes it does seem Pep's style where he likes his possessions. He likes, ball to feet. He almost loses it as kind of like Spain does, where the idea is to just kind of have the ball, and that's kind of your defensive approach.
Mhm.
Sometimes you do need a little directness. Sometimes you do need a little bit more. And I don't, I don't necessarily want to bash Pep, but sometimes it does feel it can be stale, without, someone like a Kevin De Bruyne or Holland kind of, kind of being on the end, of something.
Mhm.
Sometimes, Gundogan is kind of, gets into those spots. I think that's worth saying as well. The only counter argument I had was, Ancelotti has won, a title in basically every single, like, big league in all of Europe. I feel like that's
Mhm.
maybe arguable. I think he does have 4 Champions Leagues as well.
Yeah,
2 with,
shit ton.
Madrid, 2 with, AC Milan. Um, and Zidane won, like, I guess 3 Champions Leagues
Yeah, in a row, but
Madrid. Um, and then, it I don't when you're talking about, at this level, you can't just look at, "Oh, it's at Madrid. Oh, it's here. Oh, they have owners here."
yeah,
There are only a few clubs that actually have these kind of stature, but at the same time, these clubs do have that kind of stature when you're talking about something like this. So I don't think you can necessarily knock that with Pep. It has taken him
yeah,
this long to get here, but now that he finally
yeah.
has it,
Taking a while.
you can't knock him. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree.
and Jeremy thinks it'll be stripped in like 2025. So
We'll
that's
see.
kind of funny.
You never know, we'll
Um,
see.
but they on the real though, I guess maybe the counter argument here is he wins this title, and it's not really the most beautiful football, you would imagine. You turn in, you hear Man City, playing the certain style, scoring all these goals, and then I kind of argued he wins playing Sean Dyche or Hodgson ball a little bit,
Mm.
maybe not necessarily, but it was very pragmatic. Obviously, yeah, I would like to see Sean Dyche have someone like Rodri and to see what he would do with him. If he would make Raji, hoof it up or not. And that is maybe grading City on a curve, but it did seem the idea was to prevent anyone countering on you and not necessarily to push a lot of bodies forward in the
Right.
attack. And it did seem, but that
Yeah.
pragmatic approach worked. So it's worth saying that
Yeah,
as well.
and it got him the cup, yeah, so you gotta do what you can and, just grind out games if you have to. If you're not playing well, find a way to win.
'Cause, to be honest, I kinda wanted for him to, like, finally win it. I wanted him to win it kind of his way. I wanted this to kinda be similar to, like, 2011 when, they just absolutely destroyed, Man United. I wanted to be kind of a statement to kinda punish, Inter's back 5 because Inter were playing very defensively as well. They were more focused on how to play without the ball than with the ball.
Right.
And it's just, as a neutral, that just kinda gets dull. It's interesting,
That's true.
tacticudos, I guess, is to say, "Oh, look how he marks him and whatnot. Oh, when he presses, that's interesting." But that can get really, really dull, after, like, 5 minutes. It
Yeah,
just
especially if
seems
there's no goals
yeah, or at least, shots, or at least, like,
or
interesting
shots.
yeah,
Yeah, good shots.
something that makes, a defense kind of, scared.
Mhm.
Because it just felt everything was pragmatic on both sides. But, yeah, it is what it is. Um, and it does seem, let's see, mentioned Kevin De Bruyne possibly, being out, nursing that hamstring, so possibly loses Gundogan, Mahrez, and Silva. They have been linked to Kovacic. That actually looks like that might actually be done, but it does feel they
Mhm.
maybe need to do something else. I hope they don't go for Sloboshai, because I feel like, Newcastle's kind of been linked to him as well. To me, he seems kind of a Kevin De Bruyne kind of player, in Germany right now, and I think he's only 20, 25, 24 as well, so he fits the age profile. Um, if City are going to I don't necessarily say it's time to move off Kevin De Bruyne, but they need to maybe think,
Mhm.
he being 32, coming up, they need to maybe think of his replacement because this style doesn't really work without someone like him.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they need that chief creator.
because I don't really feel like that is Foden. But I don't know. Maybe that is Pep's idea. I feel like that could maybe be
Yeah.
Grealish if Pep kind of took the chains off him and Pep actually got wingers. Because
Yeah, it could be, yeah.
'Cause it just seems, the main difference between, I keep going back to Brighton and De Zerbi is, Pep has the idea of his wide players are to not lose the ball, but that means not necessarily taking risk, not taking players on, where,
Right.
Brighton with De Zerbi, have Matoma, "Hey, try to get past your guy as much as possible." I just
Oh, yeah.
feels they
Take
they
him
don't.
on. If it's 1v1, take him on every time.
Yeah. And I guess, like, the flip side of that is by playing Pep's style is you're able to save legs a little bit more, because they
Yeah.
really don't run
True.
as much as other teams, which is interesting.
Mm.
Brighton actually are kind of the same. Brighton actually, I think, were, like, 17th when it comes to distant covered, which shocked me.
Really?
Pep's side was, like
Interesting.
Pep's side was, like, 15, Arsenal were, like, 13, Liverpool were,
Hmm.
kind of, I think, like, 10th or so. So
Dang. That's very
I was
interesting.
surprised to see those stats, to be honest. But
Yeah, me too. Interesting.
so, that's maybe it. Do you got any more to say about, Pepper City? What are you looking forward to maybe next season? We do have, Arsenal have been linked to some interesting names, and, or maybe
Yeah.
Arsenal's owner, has got a taste for winning because the Kroenkes have won with, the Rams. I think they've won with the Avalanche, and they just won with the Nuggets. It was interesting to
Oh,
actually see him
yeah.
speaking, with the Nuggets, so, who knows? Maybe he's got
Yeah.
one more on his mind.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. The Arsenal are still gonna have to spend some money, and they're gonna have to get rid of some of these players that just aren't gonna cut it, and they're gonna have to increase that depth now that they're playing in the Champions League too. So yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, they get a lot of players because they're gonna have to build up that bench. I mean, that's basically what hurt them down the stretch. Is players got hurt, and the bench players weren't good enough to keep them where they were at. So it's gonna be a busy summer. We'll see what happens, but I think they gotta get rid of some players first, unfortunately, before they buy anyone.
Like, Nelson, Lokanga, who do you have
Chaka, maybe,
anyone on your
yeah.
mind? Oh, okay.
Chaka, yeah.
Yeah,
Lakanga probably. Who else?
like,
Pepe. Maybe sell him finally.
oh, I didn't know he was on loan.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Interesting. What about, Nuno
Balogun
Tavares?
too. He's on loan as well. Yeah, they might sell him.
And probably
Yeah,
Maitland-Niles.
yeah, Malinowski. I think he's gone already, but
Oh,
I
okay.
think I thought so, but
'Cause one thing that they have done is they locked up, Saka. They were to get a new
mhm.
contract with him, which is good, and, I think I saw they were able to do that with Saliba because there were kind of
Yeah,
there was worries
their
about him.
concerns.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and
So
they locked him down too, so it's great.
so that's good business, by itself, and they keep being linked, to Declan Rice. That's gonna be a big expense. I'd be surprised why they
Yeah,
haven't necessarily been linked to Casado. I saw, like, Chelsea is now maybe kind of the lead for him. I feel like Casado can maybe do, he can not kind of do, like, two roles. He can play deeper, or he can maybe be a little bit more advanced. Casado and Rice would probably be ideal, for you guys, but that would be
incredible.
paying, like,
Yeah,
270,000,000 essentially, probably.
yeah,
Um
yeah. It's too much money.
and I saw a weird name yesterday. I'd be kind of curious to see what your thoughts are on this. Kai Havertz was mentioned by,
Yeah, I saw that.
Ornstein.
Hate it.
Yeah,
Yeah. I don't know. I just don't. I'm not a fan of Havertz for. Yeah, I don't think he's that good either. So I don't know. Maybe like a kind of backup or change of pace guy to Jesus, but not a fan. I'm not a fan of that. But we'll see what happens.
yeah. Because the thing I was thinking about is I don't really know how you would do this, how you would fit him with Jesus. And
Mhm.
I wouldn't spend 40, 50 million for just kind of a backup. Um,
Right.
but
Exactly. Yeah.
I was trying to convince myself that this could maybe work. Because at Chelsea, Havertz, you have to find a way to kind of, subsidize or replace because he doesn't have pace essentially. Um,
Yeah.
so you have to find that elsewhere. And with Arsenal, you have that with Martinelli and Saka, and you also have people, that can play on the wing, cut inside, and be goal scoring threats. At Chelsea, Kai Havertz did not have that. He was forced to play
Yeah.
with Felix. He was supposed to play with. He didn't like playing on the wing at all, or, forced to play with Mudryk or Werner, who seemed to forget how to play football when he played with Havertz. So
Yeah.
I do feel like fitting him around speed. I do think would be better for him. I don't necessarily know if it would lead to him all of a sudden becoming the Bayern Leverkusen, Kai Havertz. Maybe we're just not going to see that. Um,
Yeah.
but
Unless he goes back to Germany.
it's also a reason why I thought maybe he would fit at Real Madrid, with Vinny. And they're looking at a striker, though it looks like they might have a different name in mind. So we'll try to touch on some of the transfer gossip and then kind of close up shop, because it seems Mbappe has decided to be I guess I want to say a drama queen, has decided to make the headlines about him again. It seems like he's not going to extend his contract, so either PSG sell him this summer or they possibly lose him for free coming up. And,
Yeah.
if that's the case, then, Madrid are going to be interested. I don't know how they would necessarily make it work. They just spent 100 million on Bellingham. But
Mhm.
Bellingham doesn't get you past Man City, in my opinion. Mbappe would.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
Real Madrid get Mbappe, they immediately become the favorites for everything next season.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially with Benzema gone, it's a
and they
perfect spot for him, honestly.
Right, they need a striker, and, people maybe think, "Oh, well, will Mbappe and Vinny fit together?" Absolutely, because I think Vinny showed a little bit this season, he can play a little bit inside as well. He doesn't just necessarily have to be the pacey winger, and Mbappe has turned into a number 9, at PSG, and for
Yeah.
France. He doesn't just, sit on the wing. He plays in the middle, and he's a target man. He's good in the air. No, maybe you would have an issue with him trying to press, but with Ancelotti at Real Madrid, it seems like they don't really press that much at all anyways. It would be a perfect
True.
fit. Yeah,
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah. And that opening just it's tempting.
and the other, option is, we mentioned how, Harry Kane maybe to United has been a thought because Man United possibly need a striker. Man United have been linked to, the PSG ownership, and if they get that, what's a better way to open up a new, kind of ownership, a new, ownership era than bringing, someone like Mbappe to Man United and basically creating Messi v Ronaldo version 2.0 with, Haaland and Mbappe in the
Mhm.
EPL. It almost seems like the EPL itself would, like, help Man United kinda create that move because 'cause you'd also have the 2 players playing in
Crazy.
the same city. That would be
Be insane.
yeah. I don't necessarily know if that actually is in the cards. I don't, but it does feel like Man United is the one club that could probably do the wages, and if they get the new ownership, probably could make it work. And then again,
Hmm.
in 5 years, all that money laundering stuff that's been on Man City
Might
can
catch up. Yeah, might catch
maybe go
up
to
with
Man
them.
United, put them
True.
both under. But at least that would be Liverpool would cease to exist as being mentioned in headlines. But at least for a season or 2, I would have to admit, that would be quite compelling, to see
It would.
one v the other because that would contain all soccer discourse for the next, like, 2 or 3 years. Uh, Man United, Man City in the same club, Holland v Mbappe. Um, and just, would Erik ten Hag be able to, last a season or 2? Maybe you'd have to get someone else, I don't know. It doesn't seem like Alex, likes the idea of that, though. He was like, "I'd be done."
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh
yeah, he doesn't like that idea, does
And if because I don't know what you do if you Man United, you need to get that ownership thing done, though it takes a while for that to happen. Which is we're saying as well. Chelsea were able to get it done because they had the government help them because of the Ukraine and Russia stuff.
Yeah.
Usually it takes a couple years to get an ownership kind of switched in and out. So I don't necessarily know if they can necessarily do that now because it does feel
Mm.
like we are going to have another summer of Kane saga. So does
Yeah,
Man United try to go for
possibly.
him or not? If you have the idea, if you have the thinking that you can go for Mbappe, obviously they're probably going to pursue that. If not, Kane makes a decent sense as well.
Yeah,
Him being like 30, I don't think he's mid his 30s. I think he's 29 now, and
29, I
it's
think, yeah.
not necessarily like he uses his pace for his game, to be honest. And you feel like he would work with Rashford. This would make sense as well, and we mentioned that of the entire season, so I don't necessarily know.
Yeah,
Let's
who
see.
knows? Who knows?
Yeah, and who does Man City go for? I weirdly saw they maybe linked to this young Turkish youngster Arda Güler of Fenerbahce, who
Mm,
looks interesting. At least on his F brief stats, he looks almost like a carbon copy of Bernardo Silva. But that's in the Turkish league. It's not
mhm.
necessarily easy to do that. But yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, does Man City decide to look at I don't know, Valvasquelia and try to be like, oh, well, maybe we can move Grealish a little more centrally, try Valvasquelia there. I know he was linked in the beginning, but uh, Do they try to do something like that? It seems like Rafael Leao is, penciled himself down to be at AC Milan, so he's not gonna necessarily be an option. Or does Pep, I guess, doesn't really like wingers that like to be direct and take players on anyways. So maybe he just likes having what he has. Maybe he just moves Foden into the Mahrez spot. If he loses Mahrez, who cares? And then he tries to find like a bench option. I don't know, but Man City are going to have some intrigue this summer as well. Um,
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
and that is probably it. The UEFA semis are underway. Croatia beat the Netherlands yesterday. Ronald Koeman was playing Virgil van Dijk as a striker in extra time, which I didn't necessarily love, and it
Hmm,
backfired. So they ended up losing
hmm.
4-2. It was 2-2. They went to extra time, and then Croatia got 2 goals late. Spain and Italy play today, and then that's enough about Europa and or UEFA and Europe. We've got it's our time to shine. We have our own Nations League tonight. We play Mexico, and a first chance to maybe see Balogun. I mean, what do you? Is that maybe what you're most excited for, or do
Yeah,
you?
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It would be awesome to see him play. It'd be awesome to see him do well too. And I mean, big opponent in Mexico also, so it's perfect time for him to shine. I think.
Well, I saw the roster that was released for the Gold Cup, and I want us to beat Mexico just to see another game. Or maybe whoever we play. I think it would be the winner of Canada and someone. Uh,
Mm.
because it seems the Nations League is going to be the roster to take stuff seriously. Because the
Yeah,
Gold Cup is just a who's who of no one I want to be featuring in 2026, to be honest, or featuring
right.
in next year's Copa. Because we have that, we need to get the summer
That's right.
right and take the summer seriously. And it seems if we're doing the roster that I saw for the Gold Cup, we're not doing that.
Mm,
And it seems our
mhm.
U21 team bounced out to Uruguay. Uruguay, I think, won the U21 World Cup. Um, but we don't necessarily great there. So you don't necessarily know if those players are going to be inserted into 2026. But 2026 is going to be here soon.
Yeah.
And our first real warm up will be next year's Copa, and so we need to get the summer right. And it seems we still don't have a coach. I'm kind of upset about that. I keep seeing Berhalter's name is still being mentioned, and that
Mm,
kind of freaks me out as well. So I I just I'm hoping to at least have more and more questions answered than more questions at least after this. So we'll see. Bellingham
mm.
answering maybe the call at striker, we hope, or maybe Pepe helps out with that. We don't really know how Rain is going to necessarily fit back into the squad. He did feature under Anthony Hudson, and it seems he has been inserted back in with the guy in charge now. I don't even know what his name is. Uh,
Callahan.
BJ, yeah, that's right, BJ Callahan, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I was actually kind of warming up to Anthony Hudson, and it seems he left us for a Saudi club, and I don't know if
Mm.
that's an act of war or not. I shouldn't say that. But the Saudi money have lured him, and good for him to be able to to get the little chance that he had with the USA. I guess he impressed a little bit, and he gets to manage a club in Saudi Arabia, potentially a club that they could go out and buy Mane, which I saw was
Yeah.
they were linked to. So good for him, and
Yeah.
it's just unfortunate for us because I was starting to really like him. Um,
Mm. Yeah.
and it seems who we linked to. I don't want it to be Boherter. Actually did see Patrick Vieira's name mentioned, and
That would be awesome.
I
Yeah.
personally floated his name after we lost to the Netherlands. I didn't think this would be any kind of chance, but now that he's not with Palace, and maybe this would interest him. To be honest, he
Yep, that'd be
reportedly
great.
he
Yeah.
reportedly is really good working with the youngsters.
Mm.
The only issue is you're hiring a guy that hasn't been an international coach before, and it is different. It is you don't see him that much. You only see him like 10 times a year. Um, but anyone would be better than having Berhalter back after all
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
drama we just went through. It's insane that he's still being looked at, and that to me suggests that they aren't taking this seriously still, which is not.
Mm.
The vibes have changed from being like, "Hey, we're not doing too bad. We have a chance to maybe do something here," to being reversed. But we'll see. Tonight is a chance to kind of reverse that, and we'll see what the story is after tonight. So
Yeah.
Alright, so that is it. We probably won't talk about the what happens with the Nations League. Maybe we'll talk a little bit, during the Gold Cup or, like, Women's World Cup, and then we'll try to fit in, like, a transfer show, in between there. Um, or not. Your face was, like, saying no. Oh, we'll try to do, like, a show sometime in the summer to just kinda be like a transfer recap, essentially. And then,
Mm.
maybe try to kick back up. I don't know. But thank you for joining us, and, Rex, thank you, for being able to join the entire season. We were able to go the entire season, and it was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
man, we did it. It was so many good matches too over the course of the season. It was a great year. So
and
fun.
and it was a great year to do this because, we had the World Cup, mixed in between. It feels like we didn't have an off season. We were, like, doing this every single week.
Yeah.
And, it's just wild how it's finally come to a pause, and, I was finally feeling it a little bit yesterday where, well, I guess I had, the Holland game. Like, the other night after, like, the basketball ended, I was like, "Oh, there's baseball on, nothing else." I was like, "This is ball. This is dull."
Yeah. Baseball and that's it.
Oh, well. Alright, well, I guess, that is us, that is it, for us 2 at the, Reserve Squad, and, I guess, for us to, as we always say, you stay squatty,
Big squatty.
and stop recording.
All right, man.